What if the most dangerous decisions you'll ever make happen in the quietest moments of your life? Not in panic, not in chaos, but in the hollow calm that follows unspeakable loss. When the casseroles stop coming, when the calls slow down, when everyone else returns to life, and you're left staring at a stack of paperwork, a house that feels like a museum, and a heart that doesn't know which way to beat anymore. That's when the pressure creeps in. You should sell the house. You need to move on. It's time to start fresh. But what if saying yes to the wrong thing in grief isn't healing? It's harm disguised as help. In this video, we're not just talking about mourning. We're talking about what never to say yes to after losing your spouse, because your future depends on the choices you protect when your world is at its most fragile. This isn't about fear. It's about clarity. And before you make a single move, you deserve to hear the truth. Grief doesn't enter with a warning. It arrives like a wave collapsing everything you thought was stable. The bed feels too big. The meal's too quiet. Even the air in the house is different, heavier. The world moves on, but you're suspended in that surreal space where nothing makes sense. And it's in that space, in the raw fog of mourning, that the most dangerous words start showing up. You should sell the house. Maybe you need a change. It's time to move on. Well-meaning friends, curious relatives, sometimes even your own voice. They don't mean harm, but grief isn't the moment for decisions. It's the moment for stillness. Because when the person who once shared your every plan is suddenly gone, it's natural to want to take action, to do something, to fill the space. But here's the truth. The worst decisions are almost always made in the first year of loss. Why? Because grief feels like urgency. But it's actually a time to pause, not permanently. Just long enough to let the storm settle, so you can see clearly again. In this video, we'll explore 5 things you must never say yes to too soon after your spouse dies. And it's not because these choices are always wrong, but because making them before you're ready can have consequences that ripple for years. Some are emotional, some are financial, all are deeply human, and we'll walk through each, not just with facts, but with the stories of those who've been there. People who rushed, people who waited, people who learned. Because grief doesn't come with a manual, but it does come with moments. Moments where a single yes can either open a door or build a wall. Let's make sure you open the right ones. 1. Making big financial decisions too soon. Grief clouds judgment, making irreversible choices risky. Avoid rushing into selling homes, moving, giving away money, or making investments. Predators and well-meaning but misguided advisors may pressure you. Follow the 1-year rule. Wait at least a year before major financial moves. Real-life story. Margaret sold her house too quickly and regretted it. There's a strange silence that follows a funeral. The flowers begin to wilt, the calls taper off, and in that quiet, something else creeps in. Pressure. Not always loud, not always aggressive. Sometimes it's just a suggestion from a sibling, a friend, a neighbor. Maybe it's time to sell. Or worse, it's a voice inside your own head whispering, I can't afford this place. I don't want to be here without him. Maybe a fresh start will help. But here's what no one tells you while you're grieving. Grief makes your brain vulnerable. Science shows that decision-making is impaired during mourning. You might feel lucid, but beneath the surface, your nervous system is in survival mode. And survival mode is a terrible architect for the rest of your life. That's why financial advisors and grief counselors alike urge this rule. No major financial decisions in the first 12 months. Don't sell the house. Don't cash in the life insurance in one go. Don't lend or give away large amounts. Don't invest based on emotion, because this isn't about money. It's about protecting your future self from the consequences your grieving self can't yet imagine. Take Margaret, for instance. After her husband passed away unexpectedly, she sold the house within 2 months. She told everyone it was too big and too sad. But 6 months later, she missed her garden, her neighbors, her peace. The apartment she bought wasn't cheaper. It was just emptier, and she couldn't get that decision back. When you're mourning, it's easy to confuse movement with healing. But selling a home, changing an estate plan, or making big donations doesn't erase the ache. It only adds risk. If your spouse handled the finances, you may be stepping into unfamiliar territory. Don't rush it. Take small steps. Seek trusted advice. Press pause. You're not weak for waiting. You're wise. Let your emotions breathe before your bank account reacts. Because healing isn't something you buy. It's something you give yourself space for. 2. Isolating yourself from friends and family solitude is natural, but prolonged isolation worsens grief and health. Stay connected in small ways. Coffee with a neighbor, short walks, support groups. Human connection supports emotional healing and physical health. There's a certain kind of exhaustion that grief brings, the kind that doesn't go away with sleep. It makes conversation feel like a chore. Even laughter feels too loud, too foreign. So, slowly, without even realizing it, many people begin to retreat. They stop answering calls. They let invitations sit unanswered. They think, I just need time alone. And for a little while, that's okay. Solitude can be sacred, but if weeks become months and the silence grows deeper, isolation stops being a sanctuary and becomes a cage. Studies show that social isolation increases the risk of heart disease, cognitive decline, and even early death. But beyond the science, there's a deeper truth. Humans are wired for connection, even in grief, especially in grief. Walter, a 74-year-old retired teacher, lost his wife of 48 years and began to fade, quietly. He stopped going to church, skipped game nights with neighbors, ignored texts from his daughter. I don't want to be anyone's burden, he said. But what he didn't see was how much his presence had once meant to others. It wasn't until his grandson dropped by unannounced with a chessboard and a silly grin that Walter cracked a smile for the first time in weeks. It wasn't the game that brought him back. It was the reminder that he was still wanted. Not for chores, not for advice, just for himself. Grief tells us to shrink, but healing asks us to reach. Not in grand ways, just little ones. A walk with a neighbor, coffee with a cousin, a few words in a support group. You don't need to pretend to be okay. You just need to remember you're not alone. Because grief wants you to disappear. But your life, even now, is still seen. And when you connect with others, even briefly, it's like leaving the door cracked open just enough for the light to get back in. 3. Ignoring your own health and well-being. Many skip meals, avoid medical care, and neglect themselves due to grief. Health often deteriorates after a loss, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Make small, intentional choices. Eat regularly. Walk. Keep medical checkups. Real-life story. James neglected his health until his daughter intervened, helping him feel better through simple lifestyle changes. In the aftermath of losing a spouse, your body keeps functioning, but often without your permission. You breathe, you move. But eating feels mechanical. Sleeping is inconsistent. And doctor's appointments? They slip by unnoticed or worse, avoided. Because when grief hits, survival feels like enough. But here's the truth. No one wants to say out loud, Ignoring your own health while mourning someone else's can slowly erase the very life they loved. James, 72, stopped going to his cardiologist after his wife passed. She had always reminded him, scheduled the visits, picked up the prescriptions. Without her, the structure vanished. So did his appetite. So did his morning walks. Within 6 months, he landed in the ER with symptoms he had quietly ignored: fatigue, shortness of breath, chest discomfort. He survived, but barely. And not because he wasn't warned, but because he felt too lost to care. Grief tricks us into believing that we don't matter anymore, that taking care of ourselves is selfish, that reaching for joy or even basic stability is somehow disrespectful to the pain. But here's what grief doesn't understand. You honoring your life doesn't dishonor theirs. It fulfills it. Your spouse loved you, wanted your heart to keep beating, your hands to keep working, your mind to stay clear. They didn't leave so you could disappear too. And it doesn't take a grand transformation, just a few steady, gentle choices. Drink water, step outside, refill the prescription. Tell the doctor the truth, not just about your blood pressure, but about the hole in your chest that medicine can't measure. Let a friend bring you soup. Let your child walk with you. Let your body grieve in ways the heart hasn't even caught up with yet. Because if you want to heal, your body needs a chance to hold you through it. Health is not vanity. It's permission to keep living. 4. Rushing into a new relationship grief can drive a desire for companionship, but rushing risks more pain. Some relationships begun too soon are rooted in avoidance, not healing. Watch for red flags, manipulation, isolation, or financial pressure. Real-life story. Barbara entered a relationship too quickly and later regretted it. When ready, seek love from a place of peace, not desperation. There's a loneliness that creeps in not just at night, but in the space where conversation used to live. The missing toothbrush, the silence during dinner, the empty passenger seat. In that vacuum, it's easy to crave closeness, not because you've healed, but because you want to stop hurting. And this is where many grieving hearts take a dangerous detour. They say yes to a new relationship before the wounds have had time to close, not out of recklessness, but out of need, out of hope, out of fear. But here's the hard truth. You can't rebuild something new with the rubble of what hasn't yet been grieved. Barbara, 69, met Alan at a community center just 4 months after her husband died. He was kind, attentive, and lonely too. At first, it felt like a miracle. Companionship, laughter, even the thrill of being seen again. But as weeks turned into months, differences surfaced. Barbara wasn't ready for his expectations. Alan wanted to move in, merge finances, make plans. Barbara was still waking up thinking her husband would walk through the door. And in the end, the breakup hurt almost as much as the loss that preceded it, because she hadn't given herself time to be whole again before trying to share her life. This isn't to say new love is wrong. Many find beautiful, healing partnerships later in life. But the key is not when, it's why. Are you entering because you've processed your grief, or are you trying to bypass it? Are you falling in love, or are you falling into a distraction? The difference is subtle, but crucial. And here's the most important part. You are not broken because you miss companionship. That longing is human, but don't let it rush you past the deeper work of healing. Let yourself be alone, not as a punishment, but as preparation. Because the version of you that walks out of grief whole and steady is the one truly ready for love. Not as a rescue, but as a choice. 5. holding on to every possession. Without letting go, keeping everything exactly the same may hinder healing. Holding on to a few meaningful items is healthy, but creating a shrine can freeze emotional growth. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means making space to breathe. Real-life story. Harold kept his wife's belongings untouched for too long, then found relief in gradually letting go. There's a drawer you haven't opened since the funeral, a closet with clothes still hanging in perfect form, a coffee mug that hasn't been touched, but also hasn't been moved. Grief makes us freeze time. It convinces us that letting go of an object is letting go of a person, and so we hold on. To the jacket, the cologne, the sticky note still left on the fridge. It feels like honor, like respect. But when weeks become months and months blur into years, those sacred items can begin to feel like anchors. Holding on to everything keeps your heart in a room where time no longer moves, and neither do you. Harold, 82, kept his wife's room exactly the same for 3 years. He told his children, "I just can't bring myself to change it." But over time, he stopped sleeping in his own bed. He stopped inviting friends over. The house became a museum of absence, and one day, standing in her doorway, he realized he couldn't remember what her laugh sounded like, only how her shoes looked. That's when he knew it was time, not to erase her, but to make space for living again. He kept her favorite scarf, her wedding ring, one framed photo. The rest he donated to people who could use them. And in the empty space, he felt something new. Breath, movement, a small breeze of peace. This isn't about forgetting. You'll never forget. This is about honoring their life without halting yours. Choose a few items that carry the story. Really carry it. Then let the rest go. Not because you didn't love enough, but because you're learning to live with the loss instead of inside it. Because healing doesn't mean letting go of their memory. It means letting go of the need to prove, through possessions, that your love was real. It was. It still is. And it always will be. When you lose a spouse, the world doesn't just look different. It is different. The future you pictured together vanishes, replaced by blank pages you didn't ask to write on alone. In those early weeks, you're not just mourning a person. You're mourning a rhythm, a routine, a version of yourself that only existed in the reflection of we. And yet, slowly, life keeps calling. Through small moments, the plant that needs watering, the neighbor who knocks, the letter that arrives in the mail. And with every choice you make from that moment forward, every time you say not yet to pressure, yes to your own pace, no to the noise of shoulds, you begin to reclaim something powerful, yourself. This journey isn't about forgetting, it's about remembering differently. Not through rooms preserved in grief, but through the way you carry love into the next chapter. That chapter might involve solitude. It might involve new friendships, new routines, even new love one day. But none of it has to be rushed. None of it requires approval. The only thing required is that you honor where you are and move forward when you decide, not when the world gets uncomfortable with your mourning. The 5 things we explored, money, isolation, your health, new relationships, and possessions, aren't just practical checkpoints. They're mirrors. They reflect how you choose to survive, and hopefully one day, how you choose to live again. Grief changes you, but it doesn't end you. And the truth is, you don't owe anyone resilience on a schedule. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your timeline. You owe yourself patience, protection, and the quiet courage to say, not yet, but maybe someday. Because that someday, it's not about moving on. It's about moving forward with clarity, with grace, and with a heart that remembers, but no longer bleeds.